Well, buckle up, Buttercup. It's time to rise and shine, travelers. That's right. It's time for the According to Willie B podcast, straight from the highly caffeinated studio. Today is August the 25th, 2025. I have to confess something today, and I think you're going to find this very interesting. Normally, this podcast is about travel and food, or food and travel, and which is no exception for today. So don't get worried. We're still talking about travel and food. But most of the time, I go find food where I travel. It's because I'm looking for the story around the food. Well, I got a surprise. Something hit me out of left field that I was not expecting. Because last week I was in Florida again, and I told you that I had something special outside of Gainesville that I wanted to come back and tell you about. Well, I had no idea what I was in store for or what was in store for me because I went looking for the story and the story found me. Here's what happened. So, in Chiefland, Florida, about 45 minutes outside of Gainesville, there is a Manatee Springs State Park. And there's a couple other little small watering holes. One's called, I think, Devil's Den, and the other one is Blue Springs. They're in Chiefland. And they're well known for the manatees coming in to feed. Now that I know this, I didn't know before, but I found out that they don't come into those areas until spring and late fall. And because right now they're out in the Gulf, feeding on grass out in the Gulf. So once the water temps change, then they come there looking for the different temp water and food, etc. Right now there's no food there for them. So I was a little disappointed that I didn't get to come back here and tell you a story about seeing the manatees. Well, like I said, there was a different story there that I guess I was meant to discover. So I'm already in town, so I might as well find food. You know me. I had researched the town before I went and had seen several locally owned restaurants. And I thought I will make my decision on which one to cover once I arrive. I pulled in the parking lot of about 5 different restaurants, and I settled on one that was called Quincy Burgers and Brisket, or Quincy Beef Cattle. And I thought to myself, this looks really interesting. And I stepped out of the car to film the sign, and the aroma from inside that restaurant, it grabbed hold me. I mean, it grabbed me by the arm and it all but drugged me into that restaurant. I kid you not. I can still smell that today. If that t-shirt I was wearing that day still had that smell on it, I would frame it. I'm not kidding you. It was that good. I'm like, can the food be as good as that aroma? And so I decided, okay, well, this is going to be the spot. So I go in and it's about 11:15, so I'm early for lunch, and I decided on a brisket sandwich and blackberry cobbler, French fries. They cut their own fries in house, and I'm telling you a little bit of backstory on this place because this is where the story is. As I they don't have indoor dining. You either take it with you, which is most of what they have, a lot of drive-through business, and then they have these picnic tables under covered awnings outside. So it was a really nice day in Florida. It wasn't 100 billion degrees like it was a couple of months ago. So I sat at the picnic table, got my camera all set up and everything, and started filming and going through the food. I was just wrapping up my meal when a family walked up, and the gentleman in the family sat down at the table at the end of mine. And we exchanged pleasantries, how you doing? Doing good. And he asked me, he said, how's the food? And I said, well, it's really good. I said, there's only one thing that could make it better. And he said, "What's that?" And I said, "Well, if I'd have cooked it myself so I could pat myself on the back for a job well done." And he and I both laughed, and he said, "Well, that's good." I said, "This is really good." I said, "It's some of the best barbecue I've had in a long time." And he sat down and we continued to talk a little bit. And as I got cleaned off my table and started gathering stuff up because I still had to go film the rest of the inside of the store, I told him, I said, "Man, I wish we had a place like this back home." I said, "Y'all got all that fresh cut meat in there." I said, "Man, it's really good." And I said, "Have you eaten here before?" And he just kind of looked up at me and he said, "A time or two." I thought nothing of it. I don't know who this man is. I walked on into the store and finished filming the inside of the store. As I am panning the walls inside the store, because they've got the restaurant and then it's like a little country store. You can go on Culinary Highway on YouTube and you can see the video. As I'm panning the wall, there's a painted portrait on the wall of a man on horseback on a ranch. Now, it's only been about 10 minutes since I was outside and talked to this man, so my memory was still pretty solid. And I see that man in that portrait, and I'm going, I just talked to that man. So I talked to the girl in the restaurant there. Her name was Chloe. She's their marketing manager, super nice lady. And I said, "If I'm not crazy," I said, "I just talked to that man outside." And she laughed. She said, "Yep, that's Mr. Don." And she said, "And this is his wife, Donna." And so she was in the store. So I got to meet Don and Donna Quincy and talked to them about their operation and how they got started, and heard the whole story as they went through the whole COVID process and everything. And it was really interesting to hear their story. And I went back outside, just to let you know, to finish that story up. I went back outside and I told him, I said, that was a pretty neat trick. He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well," I sat there and talked to you. I didn't know who you were." And he said, "It wasn't a trick. I just want to know what you truly thought of the food." And I said, "Well, I guess you got a truthful answer." He said, "I did." And I said, "No, that was really interesting." I said, "As I saw your picture on the wall in there, I'm like, wait a minute, I just talked to that man." And he laughed. And we all had a good laugh out of it. But I continued to talk to the family a little bit there, and got some more of the story. And that's what I wanted this podcast to be about, was to share with you more of the behind the scenes of the story that I found behind that barbecue sandwich. And there's a part of this that I'm going to read off of their flyer because I want to make sure that I get it correct. So I know I normally go unscripted and off the cuff, but for this particular part, I'm going to read off of their brochure because I want to make sure that I get all the details correct. Because Don Quincy is a fifth-generation Floridian and a third-generation rancher. He founded Quincy Cattle Company in 1992, stating the ideas of true love of the land and raising quality cattle has the very foundation that sparked the idea of his operation. He has dedicated his life to agriculture and was inducted to the Florida Agricultural Hall of Fame in 2022 for his efforts towards moving the cattle industry forward in the Sunshine State, aka Florida. His wife, Donna Quincy, was raised in the meat business alongside her parents. Together, the Quincy's work with one another to bring quality beef to every corner of Florida, and we are proud to bring you Quincy cattle beef. I cannot begin to tell you the impact that he and his family have made on that community. Our slogan on Culinary Highway is "Local eats are the best eats." And this guy took it to a whole nother level because he not only is raising the cattle, and he's part of the Florida Cattle Ranchers Association, and is bringing really just new ideas and methods to the industry that has just setting standards to preserve what they have there in Florida. Because, there's a lot of land in Florida that is ecologically protected and but with anything is like in any state, sometimes the money oversees some of the ecological efforts. And with that being said, the cattle industry, the Quincy's, along with the Florida Cattle Ranchers Association, are working to preserve the ecological systems that are in Florida that protect the wildlife there. Because I can tell you from going to Florida as a child, that was one of the cool things about Florida is they have so much natural wildlife. They do have alligators, don't get me wrong, and they have mosquitoes the same size as alligators, but they have a lot of other wildlife as well. And it's amazing to see. I never put a connection together of how cattle ranchers could be protecting the ecosystems in a state. But when you look, and if you'll go and research and look up Florida cattle ranchers, look up Quincy cattle, and you'll see the efforts that they're doing and how it makes a difference in the wildlife and the just the fauna and everything in that state. And it's absolutely amazing to see a family that is not only working a cattle ranch, but preserving ecological systems. They're preserving waterfowl. I mean, the list just goes on of how it's all connected. And I never put two and two together, so to speak. But after I left the Quincy's and talking to them and reading their brochures and doing more study online, it's just absolutely amazing of what they're accomplishing. And they don't stop there because now they've opened this restaurant and because I've come from the restaurant industry, I chuckled because they almost just kind of seem to find themselves in the restaurant business. And I said, well, the restaurant industry, it finds the right people. And once you're in, you're in. You can't, you can't get out. Your sanity is gone. And, Miss Quincy she had agreed with me somewhat that, the restaurant business is a little taxing, but, they have trucks where they deliver meat to restaurants and to grocery stores and to homes all through Florida. I mean, they've got a thriving business just in the cattle ranch industry, and from raising it to supplying it to the families and stores and stuff in the state. The Quincy's are really making a mark in the state of Florida when it comes to the cattle industry, and it's very impressive. I mean, for my part, I thought when I sat down to eat, I thought the food was impressive alone. And then as I began to learn the story behind what they do and how they got to where they're at, it just made it all that much more impressive. I was absolutely humbled just getting to meet as much of the family as I did, and as much of the staff there in the restaurant as I did in my short visit. And of course, I went back for a day too. So, I just wanted to try more of the menu, and I couldn't do it all in one setting. So I was like, well, I got to go back for a day too. And but it was really a humbling experience to go and to meet them and to hear their story. And I wish them much more success, even more than they've already had. But I cannot wait to see what the future holds for this family and their staff there at the restaurant. It's almost like it's one great big happy family. Now I can tell you, being in the restaurant, having been in the restaurant industry, there are days where it gets a little tough back there in the kitchen, especially in the summertime when it gets hot. But it was absolutely an honest. I found the story that goes with the food this time, and so I was very honored to do that. I said when I opened this podcast up about the manatees, and I went in search of that, and I said, well, I guess it has kind of some similarities because some people refer to manatee as a sea cow, and so here you have all these ranchers and in Chiefland. So I guess I don't think they'll ever get into the manatee business. I think they're going to stick to regular four-legged cows. But I will say that their food was absolutely phenomenal. The service, everything surrounding it, and to take it a step further, because again, we talk about local eats are the best eats, and support local, support local. In their store inside their restaurant, they had all kinds of honey and jams and sauces and seasonings, and it's all from local artisans, and they support, like, so you got all the beef that's already local, grown local, and you got all this other stuff that's from local businesses. So it's truly a local business supporting local businesses. I will say, as I scouted the rest of the town, I found everything to be in a same similarity situation where it was a very tight knit community. They believe in supporting local. If you check out Chiefland, what was it? The Chiefland. I'm losing my train of thought here. I'll come back to it. You know how it is. I probably started thinking about the barbecue sandwich and lost my train of thought. Somebody asked me the other day, said, "How is that possible? You think about a sandwich and you you lose your train of thought." I said, "Well, it's real easy. The sauce from the sandwich gets down in the gears between my ears. It all goes south from there." But no, seriously, the Chiefland Chamber of Commerce, if you check them out online, you can see. I've known a lot of Chamber of Commerces in my life, and some have been really good, and some have been mediocre at best. But looking at the online website of the Chiefland Chamber of Commerce, again, the sauce is getting between the gears here. They support their local businesses in ways that I haven't seen before. And so I think that's very unique. So my hat is off to the Chiefland Chamber of Commerce. Again, there are a lot of restaurants. They're in a lot of locally owned restaurants. They're in Chiefland. I do plan on going back and checking some more of them out. Hopefully in the next few months. I don't think we're scheduled to go back to Florida for a couple of months, which is good considering we have the Niagara trip coming up. But the whole story behind Quincy cattle, that actually just it made my day. I left there just feeling, like I finally found the story behind the food instead of the story around the food. But there's definitely like the little I will tell you, the Blue Springs water, they just call it Blue Springs, but it's like a little watering hole, swimming hole. The Manatee Springs State Park, we did drive down in there, and there is a really large boardwalk that you can walk along the river, the Suwannee River, and the views are just absolutely impressive. And it kind of reminds you of when you start studying the Florida cattle ranchers and the Quincy's cattle operation, of how they're protecting that ecosystem. It's impressive to walk down there in that state park and see the river and everything as it should be. I think it will be for years to come. I think with the efforts that the ranchers are making and protecting some of that land, and because you've pictured thousands of acres for cattle to roam on. It's not just cattle, but it's also giving a passageway for roaming of the wild animals, so that they also can go from area to area to feed and to raise their young, etc. I mean, it gives trees for the birds to land in. I mean, so the way Florida is growing and becoming more and more of a concrete jungle in some areas, it is probably a really good thing that Florida has the cattle industry to protect some of that land. Otherwise, it would just be one tourist attraction to the next. So It's very impressive to see that. I will tell you that the Quincy Burgers and Brisket, they actually opened that restaurant part on June the 30th of this year. So they've just embarked on that. And that was the other thing that was impressive to me in a restaurant that's just that newly opened. They really had their system down. Anybody that's ever opened a restaurant or ran a restaurant knows that that first that first few months of running a restaurant, when it's new and it's a new concept and everything, it will, yeah, talk about sauce in the gears between the ears. Whew. That's rough, man. I've seen people that look like they're 80 years old, but they're only 20 because they've been in the restaurant business. It's that taxing, and but they definitely had it down, and all the fresh cut meat that they had in that store. Oh, it was just so impressive. I just wish I had a store like that here near my house. I'd be grilling every weekend. I mean, they had briskets and tri-tips and ribeyes. I mean, you just name it. And if it come off a cow, they had it in there and they had it ready to go. And it looked so good. I was looking at the ribeyes and the New York strips, and the marbling in that meat was just absolutely intense. And so I know that meat was flavorful, which, like I said, I ate the first day I ate a chopped brisket sandwich, and I always taste the meat without the sauce because I want to taste the meat. But that meat was so flavorful. It's just, it was really good. And then the next day I went back and I had uh, I think it was called the butcher house sandwich or something like that. And wow, man, that thing was awesome. It had they make their beef patties out of brisket. So you had a brisket beef patty, then you had the chopped beef on there. You had a couple of onion rings on there, and then you had, of course, my favorite. They had bacon, and it was an absolute monster sandwich. You can see it on our social media, but oh man, that thing was just incredibly good, and the flavor of that meat is just so good. And I enjoyed that food so much, and I was in an absolute food coma when I left. But I will say, if you go to Florida and you're anywhere over near that way, it's only about 45 minutes outside of Gainesville. A very peaceful drive. They have the massive oak trees that kind of connect over the street with the moss hanging down from the. So it made this like almost like a tunnel of a canopy over the road. So I mean, it just made a nice drive over there. So I mean, I made 3 trips over there. So don't judge me. So I went twice for Quincy, and then I went once. We went back that next afternoon. We went to try to see if we could see the manatees, which we were disappointed that we didn't get to see those. But hey, we may be back this fall and or spring and check the manatees out, because I hear that is really cool. There's a place just south of there called Crystal River, I think it's called, and they also are well known for the manatees coming through there when they migrate. So definitely have that on my radar to go check that out. But if you do go to Chiefland, make sure to check out some of the other businesses in town, but definitely put Quincy beef burgers and brisket. I'll get it out in a minute. It's the sauce between the ears, but definitely check out Quincy Burgers and Brisket and Quincy Cattle Operation. It is absolutely impressive. If you live in Chiefland and you want to run by next weekend and pick up some ribeyes and cook them out on the grill, I'll bring the paper plates. Call me, and I'll be there. Just let me know when they're done. But until next week, until we talk again, I wish each and every one of you a very great week. Do not forget to caffeinate and conquer. You know I'm not going to let you get away without telling you that. And I'll see you right here again next week behind this big old mic and in the highly caffeinated studio. Again, I appreciate each and every one of you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.